Chris Hensley is a registered representative of Cambridge Investment Research, Inc., a broker-dealer member of FINRA SIPC, investment advisor representative of Cambridge Investment Research Advisors, Inc., a registered investment advisor. Cambridge and Houston First Financial Group are not affiliated.
The Houston Midtown chapter of the Society for Financial Awareness presents Money Matters with your host, Christopher Hensley.
Good morning, everybody. You're listening to KPFT Houston. I'm Chris Hensley. The time is now 10 a.m. Got a great show lined up for you today. As you know, the main focus on Money Matters has always been financial literacy. Most of the time, through my leadership partnership with Houston Money Week, we're doing free financial education events throughout the year. But getting the message of financial literacy out to everybody, really, it can be a difficult task. A company here in the U.S. has used technology and storytelling to bring financial literacy to the masses. In fact, they have recently partnered with a company in China to help give the message of financial literacy to China, to the nation of China. So we will learn a little bit about this and do a deep dive into the company CentSai with our guest, Arindam Nag, who is the co-founder and CEO of CentSai. He will be joining us very, very shortly. So please stay tuned. Keep listening. If you are a longtime listener, you know that we always reserve the first few minutes of the show just to tell you a little bit about what's going on here in the Houston and the Gulf Coast area when it comes to financial literacy. We did have a Houston Money Week Partners meeting this month, and so I'm encouraging people who, if you are interested in finding out more about Houston Money Week, this is an event that takes place every April during Financial Literacy Month. We are here in 2017, but we are already getting prepared for Financial Literacy Month 2018, our Houston Money Week. What used to be known as Houston Money Week takes place over the entire month, and we have for-profits, nonprofits, banks, local city governments, companies, for-profit companies, nonprofit companies working together to get the message out about financial literacy. So we did go ahead and get started. We had our first partners meeting of 2017 for 2018 this month. These are free and open to public. We're always looking for partners who are interested in getting involved with this. You can go out to HoustonMoneyWeek.org to find out a little bit more. Now, actually, when we actually get out to Financial Literacy Month in April of 2018, that same website will have a calendar of events that are happening near you. So you can actually put your zip code into the website, and it will come up with free financial literacy seminars, retirement seminars, credit counseling seminars. We've even had partners that are part of the VITA initiative. So now that'll be in April, so you may be cutting it close on your taxes, but there's free tax preparation through the VITA program. So you can find out more. I'll have some of the Houston Money Week partners come on and talk about that program most likely before we get into 2018. With that, one more announcement. I have been asked to host or MC an event out at Houston Community College. This is going to be the International Business Symposium, and it's going to be the second annual International Business Symposium. The focus is going to be on the EB-5 visa program and how to bring funding to American-based companies from foreign direct investment through the EB-5 program. So it should be interesting. If you're interested in that, there's several companies and organizations involved with it, but it is primarily through American Business Television. It will be October 9th, which is a Monday from 10 to 2 at Houston Community College. I believe you could probably get more information by reaching out to American Business Television. And with that, let's go ahead and get our guest on the line here. Arindam, are you there?
Yes, a very good morning to everybody.
Oh, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us today.
It's a pleasure.
Well, I kind of want to start the show the same way all the time. I always like to share your bio for listeners to get to know you a little bit better. Now, you are the co-founder and CEO of CentSai. You started your career as a sports writer in your teens in Calcutta, where you grew up. And once out of college, you went to St. Xavier's College with a business degree. You joined the Economic Times in India, and you spent 3 years as an editor and a reporter. You joined Reuters news agency in Bombay in 1994, and the next 12 years you moved to Delhi, London, and then New York, where you are today, and where you wrote on a variety of business and finance areas. Now, you hold an MBA from New York University, Stern Business School of Business, postgrad degrees in applied economics and journalism, and also a chartered alternative investment analyst. Whew, okay, that's a lot of stuff. Well, thank you for joining us today.
Yes, thank you very much for having me.
Is there something outside of that bio that you might be able to share with us that isn't in the bio so listeners can get to know you just a little bit better?
Oh, that's interesting because one of my best jobs that I've ever had and was when I was 17 years old. I actually worked for Mother Teresa.
Oh, wow.
In Calcutta. I worked a brief while in the evenings. It was part of my community work, and I think I was trying to discover myself, but as many people do at that age. But what I really learned was the need for helping children and teenagers to respect wealth, respect money, and also the power of incentivization when someone does a good job. And I really learned some good life lessons during my tenure working at the Missionaries of Charity in Calcutta, which was only a mile away from where I lived. And that kind of set me up in my approach and whatever I did subsequently in my life.
Wow, so that's a first. I've never had anybody say they worked with Mother Teresa. That is fantastic, and I can almost project some of those lessons right into what we're going to talk about today. Tell us a little bit about your company, CentSai, and what that's all about.
Sure. So it all started when I was actually doing a column called The Herd on the Street for the Wall Street Journal out of London in 2007, 2008, and when the financial crisis was going on. And I was almost baffled that how could work done by a small few people on Wall Street could bring an entire nation to its knees and practically the whole world to its knees. And as I dug deeper, I realized that the biggest gap was actually lack of financial education among a majority of the population, especially in America. And I realized that a lot of people did not know that the power of basic stuff like compound interest and how you just cannot buy your home and expect the property value to go up 10% per annum every year. So people would lure you to take mortgages, pricey mortgages, and you'll be able to survive. So those were the kind of things that bothered me. And when I dug deeper, I realized that people actually needed to learn in a smart way how to manage their money efficiently. So that started my journey, and I spoke to hundreds of young people, young men and women, also people who are in their late 40s, early 50s. And I learned that it's the way we teach finance to people in our country. There's a saying, a lot of people say that, oh, I'm bad in maths. And no, they're not bad in maths. They just had a bad maths teacher in grade 5. So I realized that the way to teach finance was to make it fun, make it more endearing, make it more personal. So if you look at our website, www.centsai.com, you will see that we've divided our content on the platform, which is blogs, videos, quizzes. They relate to a personal story. You can read it and say, wow, wait a minute, that's me. Oh, I'm having problems in my marriage because of money issues. That's me. So people read them, and then they're able to learn quickly rather than sitting in a classroom and reading from a textbook or from a blackboard. So that's the very essence of our platform, CentSai. In fact, our tagline is learning finance through storytelling.
I love that. And then one of the things that, as I was researching for the show, I was looking at the company, and it says that people will spend over 10 minutes on average, which doesn't sound like a lot of time, but it's actually triple the amount of time that most people spend on that content. And you've done this by storytelling. Can you tell me a little bit more about your approach to this financial literacy content?
So what we have done is we've taken the human life into various life stages, starting from going to college, going to having a baby, having a family, and then buying a property, sending your kids to school. Now, all these life-changing events, whether they're big or small, they all surround a financial decision. That's the first thing that we zeroed in on. The second thing that we zeroed in on was that people were spending a lot of time on social media. And there is this saying that if you really want to meet people, you have to be where they are. So when we saw that people were meeting, spending 7 hours a day on social media, whether it is Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, you name it, there was not enough financial education content that can actually marry the social media platforms today. We were the first people to actually come up with interesting content that resonates well on social media, and people will just read it just because they want to read good content, not necessarily that interested in finance. They would just come on and spend time. If you go to our Pinterest page, for instance, initially you will feel that it's a page of nice recipes or fashion, but actually money and finance. So we get a lot of traffic from Pinterest. Yesterday we had an article on how frugal you can be and how being too frugal is not good. And that article had 160 visits in the span of a couple of hours off Pinterest.
Wow.
So we're kind of combining social media, ability to learn through listening to other people's stories, and we are teaching people to take a couple of steps forward in managing their financial wellness.
That's huge. I would totally just piggyback on what you said there as far as the validating. As a financial advisor, I find that often when people make mistakes or run into roadblocks, they won't pay attention to their finances, but it's when these life events come up. You mentioned things like having a baby or new additions to your family, buying a property, sending kids off to school. These are life events, and that's typically when it's kind of on the forefront of their minds there. But you've been able to take that piece of it and then also marry it to the social media, Pinterest, really being able to get the message out there. Now, I want to come back to that because I'm super interested in learning more about that. But one of the things I wanted to have you on the show is that you guys have been successful at this, creating this financial literacy information and getting people to really pay attention and look at it. And you guys have entered into a partnership with a company in China. Can you tell us about what this is about?
Sure. So it actually happened totally in a very unexpected way. We are also in the middle of raising capital, and we have bootstrapped. Me and my co-founder have actually bootstrapped the company. We haven't paid ourselves for almost 2 years, but we need capital now to pay for people, staff, etc. So one Chinese investor took interest in our company, and the Chinese investor is still lurking somewhere. They want us to actually partner with someone so that they can see how we do it. So then they would probably likely invest. I mean, we don't know that yet. But as a part of the exercise, I was reaching out to all my connections, and then this company, which is also a startup in Shanghai, and they've just come out from a accelerator, so they are a young company. They have created this artificial intelligence-driven chatbot that actually banks, credit unions, and financial institutions, they can use to communicate with millions of people almost simultaneously and teach them money and finance issues on a platform called WeChat. Now, WeChat is a messenger service, and it has 950 million people on it in China. It's the biggest messenger service in China, and they're similar to Facebook Messenger, WhatsApp, and even Slack in the United States. So the chatbot will take our content that we are writing, some of our quizzes that's on our platform, and they're translating that in Chinese, and they're going to put them on WeChat for people in China to learn finance the way it should be learned. The biggest problem that the Chinese government is facing is that the economy has been growing too fast, and the rich people have become richer, but the poor and the middle class people, they have aspirations, but they don't know how to manage money properly. So financial inclusion is a big initiative that the Chinese government has taken, which has led to a couple of smart companies coming together and creating technology that can bring people onto the popular platforms like WeChat. And we come in to provide content. And we were actually humbled by the decision to, I think we did underestimate ourselves. We didn't realize that what we were doing actually was smart and was grabbing people's attention in certain quarters. So it was it was definitely good for all of us.
That is fantastic, and people don't necessarily think about that. They think of the growth that's going on in China, but that sometimes you can have growth that's too fast. The concept that you talked about, financial inclusion, getting people the information where they can get on board for the growth as well, and the scale at which you're doing this at, the service that you talked about, this AI, the chatbot that's available to credit unions and financial institutions, but the platform WeChat having that many users is such a large scale that's sounds like a fantastic way to get the message out there in China as well. I want to kind of switch back to your company, CentSai, in talking a little bit more about the information that you're getting out to the public. Do you have a story that you might be able to share where you've seen someone or a person get the information and it helped them be more successful when it comes to financial literacy?
Sure. In fact, one of the incidents I will never forget is that we focus a lot on relationships and money. I mean, we talk about financial hardships, we talk about entrepreneurship, cost of living. We also write about part-time jobs that you can have. Like a lot of young people look for part-time jobs, and we kind of have content that will help them too. But I remember, and this is going into topics that people normally do not want to talk about, which is how relationships often break down because of the money conversation. So one of her writers, she actually wrote how she and her husband would constantly argue about amount of credit card debt they should have in a family. And as a family grows, as many people on this show would appreciate, that you sometimes have to take a mortgage, sometimes you have to buy a second car, or have loans on your first car. So debt is always part of a family's finances. It's about how you manage it. What kind of debts do you have? Credit cards are always high interest debt. Personal loans are lower. And I think the husband and wife were literally on the brink, but she was able to step back and sit down with her husband and come up with a plan that actually helped the couple not only to deal with their debts. I mean, the woman was, of course, more financially savvy than her husband. And it was a phenomenal article that inspired a lot of people. And I've had people telling me, when I read that article, I realized that was me. And it helped me to deal with my family members when it came to credit card debt. Those are the kind of stories that makes me believe that what we are doing is we're actually touching people's lives. We're actually telling people how certain things should be done in a certain way so that you're not exploited. Well, one thing that I've learned from the credit crisis is that the majority of the population in America, they had lost trust in the system. They had lost trust in big banks, financial institutions, and Wall Street in general. And the time is for a lot of these financial institutions, the time is to win back that trust. So they're also focusing on some of them are focusing on financial education. A couple of them want to work with us to help them with content. So, but some of those stories when I hear, it really is inspirational that financial education, if taught the right way, can make a difference.
I love that. The idea that, I mean, we've had a lot of stuff happen around first the housing bubble and then the market crash in 2008. So we do really have to be in the position of trying to win back the trust, but also getting that financial education out there. Some of the things you just mentioned were the husband and wife that were on the verge of getting a divorce. And it's kind of a controversial topic, but this is a lot of times people feel as though that they're out there in a vacuum, and they feel like these issues are only concerning them. It turns out that divorces or finance is in the top 5 reasons why people get divorced in the country. So this is a huge thing when it comes to relationships and money. The dynamic between relationships and money, being able to put those articles out there and that information, these real life situations is super important. So let's kind of go back to the partnership. When is that taking place? Is that something going on now, or can you tell us a little bit about the time frame?
Sure. So we are right now working together to. They've already done a prototype and they've already been testing it without the content. So we are now. So RIKAI Labs and us, we are now working on combining the content with the chatbot. The idea is to showcase it to some of the Chinese financial companies. Yesterday, we also had an informal conversation to see how we could bring the product to the United States. What we probably would want to do is identify 1 or 2 credit unions who are trying to. The reason why I mentioned credit unions is because I'm a huge champion of credit unions personally, because I think a lot of people underestimate their power in society, and some of them have been struggling to reach the younger generation, and we also want to help them in creating content and some smart technologies to reach people who need to be part of a credit union. So we are going to target a couple of credit unions to see if we can pilot the technology there as well, and hopefully grow from there.
That sounds like a great partnership. I'm a huge advocate of credit unions as well. I think when compared to the big banks, there's even if you go and get a loan, typically, or some of the credit unions, it's a group of other members as opposed to just a straight credit-based loan. Lots of good benefits there when it comes to the credit unions. Tell me a little bit about your company's here in the U.S. and you're taking this really into the global environment. Has there been any roadblocks in doing that's unique to scaling this on a global level?
Sure. I think that our immediate need is raising capital. I mean, so me and my co-founder and a very good team of people, we focused a fair bit on the platform, the content. We've started generating revenues. I think our immediate roadblock is to attract attention of a couple of investors who would believe in us, and we'll be happy to partner with anyone. It could be a credit union, it could be a financial services company, it also could be a media company, and that's our immediate challenge that we need to face. We will be using the money to also recruit some good content people. We also want to integrate the technology that we are getting from our partner. We also have a new piece of technology that we haven't shared much, but I'm going to share that with our audience right now. We've also found a way to modify a piece of artificial intelligence technology that will help us to target content based on gender and also age. So right now when you open a website, any website, most of the content can be for anyone. You can be targeting 25-year-olds or 45-year-olds or 55-year-olds. But financial information or financial education differs from age group to age group. Your financial need could be different from someone who's 15 years younger than you or 15 years older than you. So we can actually target content that is useful for you and your age group only. Sometimes some content is focused only for women. Sometimes some content are only meant for younger people. So we have found a technology that we can modify the homepage and content based on your age, based on your gender as well.
Now, I'm going to kind of switch back to the personal finances as well. Through your experience, as you guys have been putting together this financial literacy content, what do you think is the biggest roadblock for an individual when it comes to being financially successful?
I think the biggest roadblock that for an individual is trying to understand the fine print of some of the products that they are sold. And I'll give you an example. And I'm going to take our audience back into 2007, 2008. Why did the credit crisis happen? The origin of the credit crisis was that very few bankers or mortgage lenders actually took the time, whether purposely or not, that's the jury is out there. But very few people actually took the time to explain to the average American that, look, yes, your mortgage rates are going to be incredibly low right now, but 3 years later, they're actually going to increase, but just not increase by 2 or 3 percentage points. It's going to increase by, from 3%, it's going to increase to 18%, 20%. And those kind of increases were not explained to the average person. The second thing is that there is nothing called free money. If you are being told that, hey, just buy a property, 100% mortgage, and the property is going to increase 10% per annum, and whatever property value increase you see, it will be more than sufficient to cover your mortgage payments, or the rental income that you're going to get will more than cover your mortgage payments. If something is too good to be true, it is probably too good to be true. And those are the things that financial education has to teach. Stock markets don't go up forever and ever. There's always a slowdown. Property prices don't grow ever and ever. There's always a slowdown. So one of our main goals is to steer people away from the bubbles. The biggest roadblock that people face is they get lured into bubble territory. They get lured into bubble territory by people who have a short-term benefit in selling those products to people. And that's where financial education should come in and say, wait a minute, that does not sound right. That doesn't feel right. That should be the role that financial education should play.
I love that. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. Well, we're actually bumping right towards the end of the show. We got just a few minutes here. What else did I forget to ask you that you'd like to share with our listeners today?
Sure. So, I think one key message that I do have for our audience is financial education has no age. If you are a parent and if your child is 7 years old, this is the time for you to teach him or her how to respect money, respect wealth, the power of savings, the return on the investment you make on your education. How can you use that? I think financial education should become part of a family DNA. We have introduced some quizzes that helps people to understand financial education in a fun way, and you can play the quiz games with family members, etc. Keep in touch with what's going on around you. Don't allow yourself to be taken for granted.
Thanks for listening to today's episode of Money Matters Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, visit us on the web at www.moneymatterspodcast.com. Drop us a line on SpeakPipe on the right-hand corner. It will receive any voicemails, questions, thoughts, concerns that you have about the show. In addition to this, we recently launched a Patreon campaign. Click on the Donate Now tab to hit the tip jar and find out what Patreon's campaign is all about.